Hello, everyone. I am Storyteller. Thank you for visiting this peaceful place. I know you are looking for something soothing to help you fall asleep, and I am here to accompany you. If you enjoy, please give me a like and subscribe, and let me know where you are from. Thank you. One book. Wonder. New York City, 1955. Lonnie White pulled up his collar at a Fifth Avenue bookstore window against the cold. Black patches from lack of sleep lay under his eyes. Snowflakes, each an unkindly tiny angel to his mind, descended in the night. But it wasn't the crystals scurrying down his back that gave him the shudders, nor was it the ice melting in the hollow of his back. It was the overwhelming thought the snow crystals gathered together purposely of one mind, a sentient being. This is not possible, he told himself, but it feels all the same, like crystals of death prescient in their condemnation. He laughed at the poetic twist coming out of his throat like a choking hack. The absurdity of his mind. The existence of hell is ridiculous. Well-dressed Manhattanites strolled by. Ankle-length dresses, pillbox hats, fedoras, and double-breasted suits. Lights flashed, and horns blared from hulking post-war automobiles, as if crying out to him alone, as if they knew him, were accusing him. Lost in thought, he stared, unblinking, at the best-selling novel on display, Scarlet Streets. A photo of the author, Julia Christensen, was poised on the back cover, a beautiful blonde. Her soft brown eyes radiated an undeniable sexual allure. If a passerby were to listen, which they never did, they might hear Lonnie mumbling at the window as they skirted around him. A bestseller, he would announce quietly, shaking his head ever so slowly. A bestseller. A young man. Lonnie was as plain could be. He wore jeans under a green military jacket, though he had never been in the service. Neither handsome nor ugly. He was a man no one noticed. And yet, he preferred it that way. A ghost to the world. Anyone who bothered to look closely could see he was deranged in his loneliness. But no one bothered to look at all, much less closely. His only unique quality was that he lived alone in a 30-room Washington Heights castle, north of Manhattan. The medieval structure was inherited when his parents died. The trust paid the taxes and bills, providing him a stipend to live on. He had no family, no need for a job, no need for friends. Occasionally, like now, he would visit what he thought of as his storefront and think back to Julia, his one and only lover. I loved her, he said to the glass. I truly did. I'm not a bad person. They had met randomly when they had shared a park bench the previous summer. He had guessed she was an actress, and she had responded with a shy smile as if he had guessed correctly. For some reason, he had mentioned Shakespeare was an actor and a writer. She, of course, had asked if he was a writer. He had admitted this was true, letting his ego lead the way, as men will do when impressing young women. But he felt he was not an authentic writer by any stretch. For this, he had to publish. He simply tapped away on his Smith Corona clipper within his castle tower, his garret, overlooking the Hudson River. Sweating, smoking endless, unfiltered Chesterfields, he pursued his great American novel from a place where his dire imaginings could flow. Julia's eyes had glowed a special admiring look, and he let the inner warmth of another human being bath him. Much to his surprise, they struck a friendship which began with meeting for coffee in the village and eventually moved on to lovemaking in her apartment. One thing he knew for sure was to never bring her to his castle, for then she would know he had risen no higher in life than an unemployed trust fund recipient and was not a successful writer. This was wrong of him, he knew. But what could he do? This beautiful woman gave him the kind of attention he had never had. Is there any actual harm in letting her think better of me than you really are? Is it so bad to go out and embellish your wardrobe with fine suits to be the man you want to be? What if this is your only and last chance to feel a love and sexual embrace you had known only others to have? And so the deception went on, until Julia, as any curious woman would, wanted to see what Lonnie had written. The book he had been tinkering away at did exist in a high stack of typed-out white paper, cross-outs, and scribbles. Nobody had ever read it. The book was just the tapping on typewriter keys to burn his time. But as proof he was a writer, he gathered up the stacks of pages, 300 or more, and took them to Julia. He laid them before her as an offering, and so, as the days went on, he would sprawl on her apartment couch while she read through his novel, page by page, hour by hour. "Don't stare at me while I'm reading, silly," Julia would say, never offering her opinion. Each day, he returned panic-stricken to his castle, for his greatest hope, his desperate passion, was that Julia would like the novel. One word from her could save or crush any last vestiges of self-esteem remaining in his lonely life. He paced and paced into the night in his cavernous dining room, biting his nails. My God, what will she think of my novel? He thought. What if she doesn't like it, but she did like it? And more than just liking it, she had a friend who she thought could publish the work with the oldest publisher in New York, a specialist in suspense and murder. To Lonnie, this seemed beyond comprehension, beyond any imaginings of success he could think of or even dream. Yes, 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 he pleaded. Anything your friend can do, do. And so he released the pile of pages with Julia to take to her friend. In just 2 short weeks, Julia had word back from Bill. Could Lonnie meet her at her apartment? But it was only later, when she was across from Lonnie in a red leather booth, sipping her gin martini, fresh from their lovemaking, a pink glow glistening on her cheeks, that she said, "I have some news about your book." Lonnie was speechless. He stared, transfixed on her siren's face, her blonde hair cascading in Lonnie's imagination, just the hint of a rise and fall of her breasts under her white blouse. "The manuscript is accepted for publication," she said. This was beyond happiness for Lonnie to hear. The novel, and only from Julia's connections, would become a success. Life was truly grand. "But there is one thing," Julia said, her delicate nails holding a martini glass. "Bill says the marketing of the book is crucial. He won't back it unless we have the right, how did he put it? Image. That's it. The right image." Julia laid out the requirements. "The author needs to be a woman. Me, actually. You have to understand how important this is. Bill says books sell with sexy authors. And you, Lonnie, well, as much as I love you, do you want the book to be successful? It could make a lot of money." At first, Lonnie thought, "No way will I let my book go to a publishing house unless under my name." But then he also thought about what he would walk away from. Lonnie was simply a hobbyist writer. Sure, now that he knew a publisher was interested, he could send it out to multiple publishers and maybe find someone else. But with Julia as the author, he had something else. He had Julia. He had the last and only pleasure he would ever find in a woman. A woman who would likely be offended if he didn't do things her way. A woman who he didn't want to risk losing. It was decided. Julia Christensen would be the author, Lonnie the ghostwriter. "Do you think it would be a good idea to send it out to other publishers?" Lonnie asked. Julia bristled, her eyes staring down. "Maybe, if you don't trust me." This, of course, settled it. The book came to market, and at first went nowhere, but slowly gained traction as a sleeper with a growing readership. A tragic murder mystery with a twist. Heart-rending, the New York Post book summaries said. And so, in 6 months, the book climbed into the bestsellers and became, by all appearances, a blockbuster. At least it was successful from Lonnie's view, reading the trades and watching Julia Christensen on the talk shows. The book is a hit. A tremendous hit, Julia said, after dragging her upper teeth against her lower lip. Lonnie stared, mesmerized. They were perched on Julia's new kitchen island. She had explained she needed a nicer apartment in case news people were to follow her home. Image, she explained, was everything. Lonnie fidgeted in his chair. It seems like we should get an advance or something. Julia flipped her right hand, as if swiping a bothersome mosquito. All the money went to marketing, dear. Lonnie took in the marble kitchen island, the lavish oriental rugs, the view of Manhattan. Hesitating like she had remembered something, Julia said, "You'll see. The truth is, I wouldn't even have taken this apartment if Bill hadn't insisted. I've never met Bill. Soon, honey, soon. You'll like him." Within a few months, Lonnie was leaving messages for Julia, and she wasn't calling back. What could be wrong? True, it might offend her, but he decided to stop by. How else could he see her, set things right? He knew she was busy, but this was only fair. A man Lonnie had never met answered the apartment door. "My good man, you must be Lonnie," he said. Lonnie could smell greasy hair tonic. The man was lanky, tall, and Lonnie had never seen a human being whose eyes smiled less. "Julia? Lonnie!" Wearing a white robe, loose enough for Lonnie to realize this was all she wore, Julia leaned through the doorway of the kitchen. "I would have called you. Finally, you meet Bill." "Bill? Introduce yourself." But Bill didn't have time, as Lonnie swept past him to Julia, who was poking cubes of raw steak and vegetables with a skewer, chopped potatoes, onions, a cucumber. Something rose up in Lonnie, an anger in his chest that grabbed his heart, prevented him from taking a breath as he choked down a venomous, dark taste. Julia could see the anguish in Lonnie's eyes, the naive awareness widening in a little boy's innocence. "What? You think I'd tie up with a loser? A one-book wonder? You've got nothing, Lonnie, not even your book. Now get lost." But we stole it, Lonnie. Your book, yes, but more than that, we stole your creative energy, your mind. It wasn't the words she said that ripped through Lonnie's mind. No. It was recognizing the flush on Julia's face that Lonnie so cherished that set him off, causing him to lose himself in an inner roar rising into the front of his brain. A blinding white. Lonnie grabbed the shish kebab skewer and held the back of Julia's head by grabbing her hair with his left hand. He plunged the steel point into Julia's right eye, then slowly thrust the length forward, his head slightly tilting in curiosity at the ease of the pointed steel scrunching through to the rear of her skull. She screamed and fell, with her hands gripping her face. Lonnie yanked out the skewer, and he was no longer slow or curious. He punched the steel again and again into her chest, blood splattering on her white robe. With each thrust, he felt the emptiness of his life, the never having the authentic love of even one woman. It was so ruthlessly unfair. He ignored Bill as he turned to leave. Bill, near catatonic, remained riveted on Julia's crumpled body. Within weeks, Lonnie picked up the New York Post. A sordid murder affair was splashed on the front page. Author Christensen, murder solved. Kennedy gets the chair. The story described a Mr. William Kennedy who pimped for this lady of the evening, Julia Christensen, until she hit it big with her book. The whore who wrote a bestseller, the article said. Just a pimp and his whore, it turned out. A common story on the streets of New York. Lonnie continued to live in his drafty Washington Heights monstrosity. Sure, he had committed a murder, he thought, but fully justified, pushed beyond his limit, and betrayed on so many levels. Who wouldn't? He often found himself on Fifth Avenue, at the window of his bookstore, as the winter diminished, spring ended, and summer began. In the window, scarlet streets taunted him. The book bragged to him how it was an even greater smash since the prostitute author was murdered. Lonnie paced his castle tower well into the night. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. He now knew he had written a bestseller, but he couldn't claim it. He also had writer's block, but knew why. Julia had taken his creative mind and died with it, stolen it, as she had said. She had taken who he was somehow, his talent. But no worries. He knew how to get his creativity back. This only made sense. He grinned to himself. That's it. What greater power than talent? And I'll have plenty. The woman lying in front of Lonnie had published not one, but 4 novels. He had followed her down the dark streets of Brooklyn. And it wasn't difficult, with a little chloroform, to get her back to his castle. She was now tucked safely away within the basement crypt. His parents' bodies lay resting near her in the gray stones, their mouths aghast, eyes open. They lay in graves covered with a clear, glass-like resin. Tossing notepaper to the girl, he demanded she write. Later, he would take the notes to his garret tower and plink away on his Smith Corona. Plink, plink, plink. But this wasn't enough. Only by piercing his eyes into the depth of her creative mind, fusing his eyes with hers in an inexorable transformation, could the process work. He strapped her down on her back and lay prone against the top of her, her soft warmth compressed against him. He sensed her terror. "Don't blink," he begged, digging into her pupils with his own. "The windows are your soul," he pleaded. "I must meet you at exactly the right moment, the moment your eyes go dead." He tightened his hands ever so slowly on her throat, saving the moment, perfecting, staring. As the girl's eyes died, He could feel her talent moving to his own mind exquisitely. The tiny angels of a sentient being joined him, the ice crystals, the snow. Once completed, he could feel his creativity soaring. He couldn't wait to go to his garret, couldn't wait to join his smith Corona. But first, some business. This was only Maud, a respect. He honored her with her own place, and lay her carefully, lovingly, he felt, in an open grave, the row his parents lay in, covering her with clear resin. She formed a sanctuary of her own, her face aghast, mouth open, eyes seemingly aware. But even while doing so, he tried not to dwell on the acid in his stomach. The burst of talent she'd given him would play out. When the time came, he knew there was only one way to refill his creativity. The snow talked to him, beckoned him on. The crystal angels, the courthouse. Almost 8:30 a.m., it was just before court would begin, when his dead client, Mr. Black, showed up to talk. Benny knew the consequences for being late, so was short with him. "Why are you here now?" He spoke in a hushed tone to the apparition in front of him, glancing around as the Alameda County courtroom began to fill up. It would ruin his reputation as the best public defender in the county if people thought he spoke to ghosts. Mr. Black's gray suit, the one he used to always wear, appeared now to fit him well. His cuffs were no longer frayed, the holes gone. Benny tasted the bitter shame of his failure with Mr. Black's case as his stomach knotted. "You owe me more." Mr. Black's voice was flat and emotionless, so different from his last day in this courtroom, when the coughs racked his body, his handkerchief filled with blood. Benny's elbows pressed into the table. The air in the courtroom hung thick and stale. His thin fingers nudged the yellow pad, straightening it imperceptibly. He moved his two pens, one black and one red, so that they were even to the pad. "I paid my debt," Benny whispered. "With the last one." Mr. Black's anger roared like a fire, heating up the air around Benny like a blast furnace. The other, past inhabitants of this room, raged, their hate overwhelming him, even with so many clients. Benny prided himself that he cared about everyone, those he had saved from jail time, and those who were put away. Mr. Black was the first one to come back and visit him, though, after dying in prison, professing his innocence with his last breath. For the accused, Benny, king of the pleas, was the PD to get in, Alameda County. Most of his clients walked, or at least avoided jail time. Benny averaged 600 cases each year, however, so had some losses, and Benny felt the pain of everyone. But innocence and guilt have no place in the criminal justice system. And Benny had begun to wonder if his work meant anything. Some of his clients were monsters. and better off behind bars. Benny worked for his clients, but he lived in this city, had to deal with the crime and violence. Should he put his thumb on the scales of justice? Today, his past clients were weighing in, screaming in thunderous rage, frustration, and anger at what happened to them in this cursed room. "I shouldn't be here. It's not my fault," one voice called out. "I'm innocent!" shouted another, then echoed over and over again into a cacophony, overwhelming Benny. Mr. Black's face leaned in to Benny, his voice roaring. "Pay up, or else." Bang, bang, bang. A gavel thundered, echoing off the wood walls around him. Mr. Black left, fading into the crowd, and taking the voices with him. Benny released his breath, trying to focus on where he was and why. "The court is called to order," the judge called out. A pale, gray man with red and piercing eyes. His head floated above his black cloak. Benny blinked, looking around as the colors of the room came into focus. A man in an ill-fitting suit slumped next to him, eyes downcast. Fear vibrated in waves off the man. The fingers of his left hand pick at the nails of his right, over and over. The scraping sound like claws on steel bars. He leaned over to Benny. "Mr. Benny, we're going to be okay, right? You're going to save me. I mean, we have the receipt. It proves I wasn't there for the rape. They can't put this one on me." Benny nodded, but didn't turn. The man's high-pitched voice whined like a broken motor, his breath hot. Benny suddenly hated him, loathed him for being here and needing Benny's help. His life depended on Benny doing his job correctly. Did this man even deserve it? Benny peered toward him, just a glance out of the corner of his eye. Lean as a mop handle, he could not keep still, shoulders moving, fingers picking at imaginary flecks on his borrowed suit and the skin of his hands. Benny's lip curled in disgust. He opened the file, the case notes in perfect order, the receipt on top, stamped with proof of this man's location across town at the time of the sexual assault. The man's arm crossed in front of Benny, his skin red and mottled with sores. He pushed the receipt with a scarred finger. "My Monopoly card, get out of jail free." He laughed. "I need to keep that. There are a few other girls they don't know about yet." The man winked. Benny brushed his fingers on the receipt, manicured fingernails pale over his dark skin, smoothing the wrinkled paper. A loud rushing sound filled Benny's head. They called to him, his clients who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, whose lives he could not save due to a lack of this kind of solid alibi. He heard them screaming, shouting at the unfairness, the inhumanity. At the district attorney's table across from him, a tall, thin woman stared with shrewd, cold eyes. She turned away to put her head down into a stack of files. Voices cried out from her table too. People wronged and insulted in the worst way. Losing property, their self-respect, or their family, and then forced to sit in this horrible room and go home with nothing but tears and anger. Their voices were loud. Punish! Vengeance! An eye for an eye! The screams racked Benny's brain, and he shut his eyes. His hands flew to his temple, pressing in to quiet their cries. Bang, bang, bang. The gavel thundered again. Benny stood, motioning to his client to stand as well. Benny clenched his jaw and knew the answer to his dilemma. Forget what was best for the client or society. Benny needed to look out for himself. This man will be sacrificed to Mr. Black to appease him and the demons chasing Benny. This man was guilty, of course. Maybe not for this crime, but for another, Benny was certain. Benny will change places, go from the defender to the accuser, from the protector to the judge. His fingers moved just a brief sweep, and the paper receipt floated unseen, down out of the file into the trash can. Gone. The trial moved fast. A police officer, serious and trustworthy in his pressed blue uniform, pointed at the man next to Benny. That's the guy. Whispers erupted from the courtroom. Bodies shifted on the wooded seats, squeaking with their movements. That man is just evil. I could tell right off. Someone said, the monster should hang for what he did to that girl. Another voice added, bang, bang, bang. Justice thundered down from on high. The verdict is guilty, the judge shouted, a sneer on his face. Next. Benny squeezed his eyes shut as the voices in his head roared out, echoing, guilty, guilty. The bailiff pulled on the man next to him. No, I'm innocent, he screamed. Mr. Benny, what happened? Mr. Black appeared in front of Benny, nodding before he left, with the man to his future hell. Then the voices were gone, the sudden silence deafening. Benny picked up his red pen to carefully put a small X to the end of the line of thousands of black and red marks, then lifted the next file off the foot-high stack next to him. Justice will be done behind closed doors. Have you seen this boy? The woman behind the chained door shook her head at the creased photograph. He's 6 here, Anna urged, but he's closer to 8 now. Ain't seen him. Sorry, truly I am. The woman hung her head, closing the door. Anna had almost gotten used to it. The slamming doors, the constant barrage of no's, dejected looks momentarily sharing her horror. Then straight back to daily life with the squeak of a hinge and the click of a lock. That's just what normal people do. Life goes on, for most. Times she wished she could close the door on it, say goodbye, give up. But what kind of mother would that make her? Sliding the photo into her inside jacket pocket, she pressed it to her chest. where he belonged. Men huddled on the apartment steps, threw dice, and glared at her as she left. Women shouting from sash windows at kids playing on the street shook their heads at the sight of her. Sorrow? Pity? Repulsion? She didn't know, nor care. By reputation alone, most everyone in Hartsville knew her, or of her. She'd become as much a lost soul as little Jimmy, except no one hunted for her. Not anymore. Released without substantial evidence is how the lawyers explained it. Not innocent, not guilty. Somewhere in between, and cast into the worst court of them all, the public. Half the town and all her family blamed her for Jimmy's disappearance, and half again thought she murdered him. Some things just don't rub out after printing. Drawing deep from a cigarette, she leaned against the rust bucket she called a car, and home, its windows crowded with the few possessions her former husband allowed her to have. Gazing up and down the street, she considered how much longer she could do this. How many more shoes could she wear through? How many? Hey, you. Anna turned, searching for the smooth voice. A tall figure lurked in the alleyway opposite, features hidden by the descending sun, intentions none the plainer. Cocking an eyebrow, she pointed to her chest. Yeah, you. Come here. Waving her over, he disappeared into the poster-tattered passage. Discarding the cigarette, she made a show of tucking her 4-day, fresh, white tank top into her equally dirty jeans. In reality, she ran a hand under her cargo jacket, making sure the snub nose would be easy to pull. Only a fool came into the devil's basement, as the locals called it, unready, unprotected, or more worrying, unwilling to do what might be needed to be done. Steadying her breathing, she edged between the cars and made for the mystery man, standing at the other end now, 1 foot on the crumbling red brickwork, arms folded, eyes closed, his head tilted to the gathering clouds. What do you want? She asked, placing her hands on her hips. Not me. He didn't open his eyes. Well, who? Boss man. Should that mean something to me? Maybe. It doesn't. Now what's this about? He needs a job doing. Says you're the woman for it. Sorry. Don't do job interviews in back alleyways. She turned, throwing a dismissive wave over her shoulder. Here now, woman. Before you go, he wants you to have this. He extended a closed fist, finally opening his eyes. She stepped back, squinting in disbelief at his yellow stare, blazing like the midsummer sun. Nonetheless, curiosity sunk its teeth into her. What's that? A gift. If you like, more be waiting after a ride in that car down there. Nodding toward the perpendicular laneway, Anna leaned out, all cautious, like to spot a rumbling estate wagon. Who's in that? And where would it take me? Trust me, woman. You ain't going to care after you see this. He waggled his fist. She extended a shaking palm. His fingers unfurled. Her heart stopped, then hammered, temple thumping loud. Impossible. Stomach knotting, hairs spiked the length of her neck. How? Dizziness overcame her, faint, happy, angry. It was all too much. Tears welled as she lifted that tiny yellow watch, the one with the cracked Power Ranger face Jimmy flipped open and shut when he got nervous. Terrified of the answer, yet hoping it to be true, she turned it over. J.C. engraved on its back. Jimmy Crawford, her Jimmy. She took off before her reeling mind could catch up, and within seconds flung open the car door. She knew the kind of mother she was. Relentless. The bag over her head didn't scare her, nor the machete-wielding woman next to her. Not even the fact they'd been driving for at least an hour now. No. What scared her was herself. She just jumped without thinking. Anyone could have faked that watch. It was common knowledge he wore one the day he disappeared, but not the engraving Jimmy did with a nail. Or was it? She racked her memory. The car slowed to a stop. Another stop sign. Traffic. The cops? With a mechanical click, the doors unlocked, swung open, and someone seized her elbow. "Let's go, woman." Her bated breath gathered like dew under her nose. Stones crunched underfoot. Then a hinge complained, as what sounded like a heavy metal door groaned open. "There's steps here. Wouldn't it be easier to take this thing off?" Anna asked, trying to add a little unfelt humor to her voice. A sharp jab between her shoulders was the only reply. She didn't ask any more questions, humorous or not. The descent stretched impossibly long, like the moment you see a child falling, but are too slow to react. With each step, the heat grew inferno hot. Sweat matted her hair, dampened her talk, stung her eyes. Where were they taking her? What did they want? Another door opened. The stench of sweat and sewage hitting her harder than a bat. Then music, laughter, glasses clinking. Prodded onwards, silence fell in her wake. Pushed into a chair, she grunted. Canvas bag whipped from her head. She panted the stale air. The room flickered. Tiny flames dancing behind red glass scattered across a discord of tables. Everything blurred as if staring through a heat wave. Licking her lips, she tried making sense of the shapes. Like a head swelling adrenaline rush, everything stopped swaying and came rushing into sobering focus. Hunched over a curved counter, a man fished juicy maggots from a writhing jar, then dropped them, slurping into his toothless mouth. Two skeletal, thin women, wearing nothing but dog collars, curled at the feet of an obese man, rubbing goose fat through his hair. Young men howled at a geriatric pole dancer, whilst an amputee burn victim served curdled milk. All the while, a man on a small stage played dirty blues on a gore-splattered guitar, face a snarled rictus, fingers bloody stumps, vomit climbing her throat, blood draining from her face. She gripped the round table as a drowning man may grip driftwood. Jesus Christ, not quite. She spun to the chocolate, rich-voiced stranger opposite. He wore a smoldering cigar on thin lips, a sneer in his ember eyes, yellowish smoke drifting from flared nostrils. "You this boss man?" He nodded. Courage boiled from the gun in her waistband. "Where's my boy?" Around. He waved a hand festooned with many rings across the debauchery on display. "You'll see him when the time's right, when the deal is done." He leaned from the shadows, elbows making the table creak. "Prove it. Prove he's here." Yellow eyes dropped a tattered ball of fabric into boss man waiting palm. Then he threw it at Anna. Unrolling that faded Superman t-shirt, her chin trembled. Jimmy's t-shirt. What happened to him? Did these people hurt him? She swallowed her fear and the urge to run. Jimmy was here. After 2 years, she finally found something. Something more terrifying than these foul bastards. Hope. What do you want? Where did you get this? She cuddled the disintegrating garment. No small talk? She held his burning gaze. Fair enough. He was wearing it when we found him. Where? Not far. Right under your nose, actually. A neighbor. A fucking what? She leapt up, anger hammering her chest. He held out his hands. Calm, Anna. I'm here to help, Anna. Help? Why? Let's say I've a soft spot for the innocent and outcast. He gestured to sit. She complied. Although it's not the only reason. You see, I provide a service to our little community of Hartville. And you? Well, you are 2 birds, 1 stone. Wouldn't it be nice to stop running? Get the vengeance you deserve. Vengeance? I just want my son. Please. Her voice broke, unstoppable tears falling. You'll want revenge. Boss man studied his nails without a care in the world. A local woman came to me, told me of a man, a terrible man, patrolling the local parks and schools, said he was offering sweets and toys to her nieces to get into his van. Smart girls ran away. The police, however, did little. The law is weak that way. He paused, puffed his cigar, and blew smoke into Anna's face. So I sent some of my hounds, he nodded to Yellow Eyes and Machete, to rain some hell on this pervert. Thing is, it was clear that his house, his deviant prison, was being used by more than just him. A ring, as they say. We searched the premises, found poor Jimmy chained to a bed frame in the basement with 2 others, little more than malnourished sex dolls. Anna's stomach turned. terror and anger searing her insides. She wanted to hurt someone, anyone. A little torture goes a long way, Anna. Remove a little flesh, and tada, the pervert gave up the names of his accomplices. Would you like to know who they are? Jaw clenched. She hissed the word. Who? I'll give you 3 names. You do what needs to be done. You'll see your boy again. We have a deal? How will I get back here? I don't know. Levi will go with you. Yellow's eyes winked at her. So, is that a yes? No sooner had she agreed than that damn canvas bag was pulled over her head once more. Anna dove into the station wagon's back seat, ears ringing, heart thumping, throat choked with the metallic aftertaste of gunpowder. Levi smiled between the seats. Damn, Miss Crawford, you a cold bitch. No hesitation. He opens the door, and you just fucking drive already. Anna barked, balling the cuff of her jacket and rubbing at the crimson mottling her face. Ha, okay, you the boss tonight. Anna stared out the rear window at the tree-lined street and white picket fences speeding by, concerned neighbors stumbling into the road to investigate the woman, wailing over her husband's body at 46 Broken Ridge Avenue. Little did they know the service Anna just did for them. Eradicated suburban filth. First of 3, she rested the revolver on her knee. Somehow, it felt lighter, as if that one bullet carried away the weight of her suffering, her loss. But he wasn't lost. He was waiting for her. Something unexpected curled the edge of her lip. You smiling, Miss Crawford? Levi asked into the rearview mirror. You are. Cold bitch. You're going to fit real nice. She shook her head, dismissing both comment and grin. Who's next? Edward. Calhoun. Anna repeated the name, tracking her finger down the apartment buzzer's nameplates. There you are. 2 short buzzes, a click, a cough, then, hello, who's there? Mr. Calhoun. Sorry to disturb you. She already picked a name from those displayed. This is Jessica Longstein. I've lost my key again. And you were the first to... Yeah. The electrical hum of the magnetic release sent a chill down her spine. Not fear, but anticipation. 1 step closer to Jimmy, 4 flights of stairs. 1 long, worn, carpeted hallway. And she stood outside his peeling door. Patiently, she waited for a Latino couple to get on the elevator, then knocked, placing a hand over the spyglass. Floorboards groaned from within. A chain rattled, a bolt slid, and she found herself staring at a stout, unshaven man in his 50s, wearing a blue telecoms shirt. What can I do for you, Missy? This is for Jimmy. His eyes stretched, fearful wide. At the name, the crazed redhead at his door, or the gun inches from his face. It didn't matter. Pull, click, bang. His last thoughts sprayed over the cracked plaster inside. his body collapsing as though its bones turned to mud. For a second, she watched him, hopeless, pathetic, no longer a danger. She breathed deep. 1 to go. Miss Crawford. Yo, Anna. Startling awake, she grabbed Levi's poking hand, blinked into focus, then looked about. She lay in the back of the car. A cul-de-sac of 2-story houses loomed outside, quiet with barely a light on, the moon hanging low, shimmering off their slate roofs. Anna stretched, cracked her neck, then shook her face. How long were we driving? I can't believe I fell asleep. It's the adrenaline. Big come down. Happens all the time. I took the long way here. Had to avoid prying eyes. That last one definitely got some flashing light attention. But this is it here, Miss Crawford. Levi pointed out the side window to a silhouetted figured light by the glow of a computer screen, typing into the small hours. Anna sucked her teeth, sniffed, pulled the lapels of her jacket, then checked her gun. Dirty bastard was probably on some chat site, pretending to be a teen girl or some other filth. You ready? And willing, Anna answered, shuffling and gently closing the door. She caught sight of her reflection, frazzled and blood-specked, and an idea fizzled into being. She grabbed her arm, dragged her leg, and hobbled towards the downstairs window. It didn't take long for him to spot her. Taking off his glasses, he twitched the curtains. Mister, please, she whimpered. I went off the road, round the corner. I need... Holding up a hand, he dashed from the room. A porch light sparked to life, and the front door opened. You okay, lady? What the hell? He spun, roaring, as the bullet tore through his shoulder. He tried dragging himself back across the perfectly manicured lawn, but it was useless. The hammer fell. Back of the head, he jerked, spasmed, fell still. It was done. She smiled, running back to the car. She could already feel Jimmy in her arms. Her sweet, innocent little Jimmy. The macabre cabaret garnered no interest this time around, and she stared straight at Boss Man when the canvas bag was removed. My boy, she said, not a request, placing the revolver on the table before her. He smiled, swirled a glass of red wine, drank, then nodded to no one in particular. Eternity stretched out before her, biting her lip, fingers drumming the scarred tabletop. She couldn't quite believe it. She'd finally found him. 2 great bulking necklace forms lumbered from the shadows, a metal box held between them. It thudded onto the table before her. Boss Man grinned, tapping its top. Giggles simmered behind her as she lifted the lid with trembling hands. Tears exploded, lip quivering, shoulders shaking. There was no mistaking it. Those cheekbones, large hollow eyes, even the skin dried and rippled as it was. She touched his forehead, sweeping away a dirty blonde fringe, and kissed him. She pulled his cracking and snapping corpse into her arms, his jaw swinging open in one last horrific scream. Falling to her knees, she pressed him close to her chest, where he belonged. Why didn't you tell me?" she spluttered between sobs. "I said you'd see him again. Here you go." Laughter rose like hyenas on the hunt. The unwashed bodies pressing coffin close around her. "It's okay, honey," she whispered to her son, rocking back and forth. "I got the bastards. I got them. 2 of them, anyway," Boss Man sneered. "What?" I said there were accomplices. I didn't say all 3 were. You humans are so eager to jump to your worst instincts. Oh dear God. Oh God. He can't help you, Anna. We have a long-standing arrangement. He finished the wine with a lip smack. "Why are you doing this to me? You're monsters, all of you." Boss Man leaned forward. "Didn't I say I've a soft spot for the innocent? Poor Jimmy suffered because of you. You're the monster who left her 6-year-old son alone in the park whilst you scored some smack," she wailed. "I'm clean now. It seemed pointless to try to explain. It wasn't going to bring him back. "What the fuck are you?" she roared. "You know already. You've always known. And now you're mine, forevermore." To a cacophony of laughter, she lowered Jimmy's remains back into the metal box, slowly closed the squeaking hinge, said goodbye, and gave up. Her finger wrapped around the trigger, the barrel cold beneath her chin. Perhaps in death she could be a better kind of mother. "See you soon, son." The identity thief. This is the hunter's badge of glory, that he protects and tends his quarry, hunts with honor, as is due, and through the beast to God is true. Jagermeister by Oscar von Riesenthal, taken from the back of a Jägermeister bottle, half full. I am left to imagine the circumstances of a most unusual case, which has the Grimlace's handiwork written all over it. The Grimlace has stolen another victim's visage and memories, leaving her a withered amnesiac. She was wandering ghost-like amid the streets of Frankfurt, with no idea how to return or where she called home. "My name is Hildegard Köppen," I tell her, "but everyone calls me Hilda. Pleased to meet you. And she trails off, unable to remember her own name. "It's okay, my dear. This is all quite normal," I tell her. I turn on my dictaphone and make my report. It is 23:36 in the evening. The patient's name is Greta Thunderberg. The patient is approximately 32 years of age, according to confirmed medical records. Greta presents with symptoms of sudden onset retrograde amnesia. She reports no memory of her whereabouts, or how she reported to Polizeireiter Staffel HE off the River Main. She complains of persistent tinnitus, disorientation, and a total loss of recent memory, as well as an inability to recall various aspects of her personality, or apparently, her own name. When asked if she is a serious person or a fun-loving one, she says, "I hardly know myself at all. I couldn't say." When asked if she enjoys large gatherings and social occasions, she says, "I should like to try it and see." She is completely flat. When asked, "Are you upset about your present condition?" she says, "I feel fine." Her face is frozen, as if she has had an excessive amount of Botox serum injected. There are neither any signs of physical trauma nor any indication of the use of surgical instruments, and the blood work is normal. My diagnosis is that there has been a sudden hypoxic event and a hardening of neural connections occasioned by calcification from exposure to chemical antagonists, causing sudden onset retrograde amnesia, all of which is consistent with a Grimlace attack. I release the patient back to her police escort, who thanks me and is on his way. Brainy, that's me. Cut it, treat it, study it. I do it all. Neurosurgeon, neurologist, and neuroscientist. Check, check, and check. And you can add dissect it to that list. Did you know that forgetting is actually part of the learning process? I'll bet you didn't. But not everyone has brains on their mind like I do. My true calling, however, is the hunt for the Grimlace. I have been stalking this freak of nature for over a decade. But this is the first time that I have ever been able to anticipate catching my quarry and finally seeing what it is made of. We are the Knights of Kadosh, a sect of the Scottish Rite. We are closely aligned with our brethren, the Knights of Tavistock in St. Petersburg. We hunt monsters. And my special assignment these many years is to rid the world of the dreaded Grimlace. After all this time, I have finally found a witness to the first Grimlace attack. Just past 1 o'clock in the morning, Agatha is coming to life. The tea kettle is whistling in the kitchen, and Agatha hums as she pours herself a cup, her hand shaking as she tips the kettle. Although Agatha was a precise woman and always had her hands perfectly manicured, the ends of her nails are growing out with ragged abrasions, and the nail polish is badly chipped. Our shared apartment is a high-rise at 140 West in West End Sud. There is a view of the city skyline and the Taunus Mountains beyond. "Where have you been, Heidi?" "I've been worried," Agatha asks. "Interviewing a victim of an attack," I say with a shrug. "I called you 2 hours ago. Remember, Mum? But what about your dinner with Renee? Did you forget?" Agatha asks. "That was last week, Mother." "Is someone changing your calendar?" she asks, hands on her hips. "You know there are a lot of doctors that want your position in the Faculty of Medicine at Goethe Universität, who would do anything to get you out of there." "Oh, Mother, no need to worry about me. Did you watch your show?" Is it already 8? Agatha asked. Mother, it is nearly 2 in the morning, I tell her, and walk into my study. I have to finish some work, Mum, get some sleep. I can barely stand to look at her when I can't do anything about it. My mother was a fine physician and a woman of prominence. She has now been reduced to this dwelling invalid who sulks about being imprisoned by her own mind. I know she won't turn in until the sun comes down. I have given up trying to get her into a normal sleep schedule. After all, it is not as if I have one myself. She'll just sit on the balcony now, staring into space, as if the vista of the horizon will give her a chance to remember that she is in the process of forgetting. It has taken nearly a decade, but I am able to locate the stagehand who was present the night of the first Grimlace attack. The English theater was playing Saint Joan of the Stockyards, and Diril Verloren had top billing on the playbill. Louise recalled. I've heard of that play. He was playing the meat-packing magnate, Pierpont Mauler, Louise says. And you were there, watching from behind the curtains, during the entire play? I ask, jotting notes. Not the whole time, Louise says. Where did you go? I ask. At one point, I ended up going out back in the alley to have a cigarette, and found the understudy, Roach, speaking with a strange-looking woman. Louise says. We will come back to that, I tell him, blowing at some hair that has come untucked from my ponytail and is dangling over my left eye. What did Diril look like? Diril was a tall man, about 6'4", just stunning. He had a lean, lanky build. His coiled hair hung down in a shag cut. He had large, straight, white teeth that gleamed in the stage lighting. He had really bad ADHD, with a cutting, manic intellect. He was always gesticulating and animated, and always at an 11 out of 10. Louise says. Was he under the influence of anything? I ask. Other than his own self-importance and fame, you mean? Amphetamines? Adderall was pretty standard. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, Louise said. I think that addiction is an impermanent solution to a permanent problem. How was the performance? I ask. He was a star. I remember his voice rising to a crescendo as he said, "Oh, everlasting slaughter." Nowadays, things are no different from prehistoric times, when they bloodied each other's heads with iron bars. It was quite the performance, Louise said. The words set off a spark of revelation as I struggle to understand my prey. I think of the price of fame for a performer. One must corral and direct a revelatory energy. From the crushing terror of the stage, the spotlight that leaves one exposed and vulnerable, an artist must mine this energy for a competence that once achieved is received, applauded, and becomes the most addictive of drugs. Yet the act is separate from the actor. The skill is separate from the skilled. The applause is not love, but mere recognition. This is not connection. There is a deep spiritual appetite in all of us for true connection. Nothing looks like a better cure for being invisible than fame. And yet, fame is the great invisibility cloak, a mask more isolating than a veil of solitude, for it expunges the person altogether, elevating their vocation and placing all value in the performance of their craft. The person behind the act starves and is strangled and becomes a slave to their role. I think of how similar this is to my mother's spells of dementia and the forgetfulness brought on by Alzheimer's. In between those shining moments for her when she has clarity of thought, in between those turns upon the stage, both die and fade into oblivion. Returning from my daydreams, I ask, did anyone have any reason to wish him harm? Just Rach Egeman, a little worm of a man. That is what we called him. Irm the Worm, ever since he played some slithering stock character named Ermin. Name just stuck. Anyway, Rach was next in line for the male lead on one show after another, and he couldn't get anywhere with his career with Deerl in his way. He had the acting chops, but he wasn't a star. He was short, unmemorable looking, just average in every way, whereas Deerl was extraordinary all around. It was never a fair contest between the two of them. And you say you saw Rach speaking with someone in the alley during the show? I ask. Why, yes, in fact, we knew her. She was a stage designer, a mystic gypsy from the outskirts named Emile Scioli. A real loner, if there ever was one. She was a sharp-featured woman of about 70, thin as a bird, with a long pea coat. Always wore a blue amethyst Hamza on her neck. She was smoking a Marlboro cigarette impatiently, Luis recalls. Did you overhear what they said? I ask. Yes. Did you bring what I asked? She said, stamping her foot against the bitter cold. Then he responded, I have it. That was it. And then he rushed back inside with something in his hand. So what happened next? I asked. At some point, toward the end of the play, Deerl collapsed. When he came to, he was like a man possessed. He began pacing the stage, and then as he looked out over the audience, he screamed at them as if a wild animal baring its teeth and growling to keep a threat at bay. And do you know what caused this transformation? I ask. No one does, Luis says. Are there any working theories? I inquire. There is a rumor that Aisha was deeply jealous. Apparently, Rach had originally been cast as Pierpont Mahler. It was all settled. The playbill was printed. But then Deerl called the theater director and said he was interested in the part. They couldn't refuse. So Deerl upstaged Rach right when he had his big break. Rach could not forgive it. He went off in long tirades. Some believe that Emile Scioli, the gypsy, was part of a group that worshipped the Croton Duvel, the Toad Devil. They had tattoos of toads stamped on their eyelids, and believed that this deity possessed the ability to erase memory, to turn invisible, and to walk among men as a blind wanderer, spreading the void of loss among the people. Some believe that toads are poor sinners serving a penance of tears and relegated to the dank, dark places and to a life of slime and bugs in order to purge their souls. Wandering spirits in an earthly purgatory, the grips and stage hands, who know Rach best, said that he has a pearl toad statue given to him by Emile Scioli that has the words inscribed on it, which say, Beng Tasser Toot. And they say the toad has a golden choker collar on it and is somehow connected to the affliction poor Deeril suffered. They say that Rach guards the toad statue with his life, and if it is ever destroyed, Darrow will be healed. This is very helpful, Louise. That is a lot to digest. I'll be in touch if I have further questions. I tell him, the grim lace has no shadow. It walks below the street lights in the alley, donning a black cloak. Its hands and face are green. Its face has no contour, just a flat canvas, until it dawns the visage of one of its victims as the grim lace slinks through the streets of Frankfurt by the train station. The streets are filled with drunks, prostitutes, and panhandlers. An old man sits with a bottle, huddled in a corner by some trash overflowing from a dumpster. He has rags about his shoulders, but his face is thin and handsome below his rugged, unkempt beard. The grim lace turns his green blank face to the man, who looks at him transfixed, and the grim lace latches on to him. A beam of translucent, opaque jelly forms between them, the bond, and the grim lace slinks in, bends to his knee, and draws out the man's visage, the man's memories, and shrinks within his robes to the height of his victim. Renewed, he stands to his feet, like a performer taking on a new role, and gains comfort in his own skin, lets the memories inhabit him, and he throws off his cloak, strolling into the square. I receive a call from the detective. He tells me that there has been a beggar who has gone missing. His daughter has come to the precinct to make the report. He tells me that the incident occurred near the train station. I thank him, and I am off with my hunting bag to find the grim lace. The cloaked creature, with the green hue to his skin, is pacing along the entrance to the train station, where the beggar used to set up each morning. In my bag is a mirror, a cattle prod, and a Sig Sauer 45mm pistol. I find a bank of deep shadows by the corner and observe my mark. The grim lace does not seem to know that it is adorning the persona of another human being. It seems utterly lost in its contrivance, cursed, as Louise had said. It seems to be in agony every bit as much as the woman Greta who came to my clinic the other day. Does this creature sleep? It lets out a blood-curdling chortle. Oh my God! The beggar must have been schizophrenic. The creature is hearing voices. I see the creature begin the painful, agonizing pantomime of a schizoid talking to himself and arguing a rationalization audibly, projecting failures to a second personality or a persecutor. This is one of the most common psychotic breaks, where the mind cannot accept its own failures and must personify or anthropomorphize its afflictions. If you hadn't told on me, I would have kept my job. You were drunk. It was you. You sneaky FK, you falsely accused me. You went to Lars and made a fuss. And see where I am now. I hope you are proud of yourself. Rat. And you are the one. You. A drunk. An ingrate. A lazy, good-for-nothing piece of La. Shut up. Get away from me. Police. I am being attacked. Ow. Stop. Get away. I didn't touch you. No. Stop. Get away. Violation. Stop hurting me. Stop talking, you dirty snitch. I watched the Grimlace rummaging back and forth, gesticulating manically, screaming, yelling, and talking to himself in a fierce blame jeopardy that I know from experience can go on for many hours. The paranoid spell of a tortured mind trying to reconcile an unacceptable fate and a cruel, unforgiving world that hands down curses and bruises with indiscriminate malice. I could find him again soon. I could make a quick detour. He would be going on like this for hours, if not days, until he was arrested, which would just land him down at the precinct. Back at the English Theater, I find Rach Egeman's dressing room. He is now playing the part of the lead in every play. He has ascended to the pinnacle of the profession. Ah, my adoring fan. What? Do you want me to sign the playbill? Yes, can I come in? I ask. Here, come sit, he says with glee, but I do not sit. I take out the cattle prod and place it on the carotid artery on his neck, and with a small squeeze, he shrieks and falls to the floor. I begin my search. After a few minutes, I find the toad talisman and stow it in my bag. Back by the train station, Deerl is still going on and on. I take out my gun and the toad statute. I place the statute on the ground. I fire a single shot, and the talisman shatters into 1,000 pieces. I look over at Deerl and see his face suddenly return to its natural state. I walk up to him cautiously. I am Hilda, I say. I've been searching for you a long time. Where am I? Deerl asks. The train station is just down there. What do you remember? I ask. I don't know, Deerl says. You must be disoriented, I say. It's more than that. I don't even know who I am, Deerl says. Quite right. But who among us really does? We all wear 1,000 masks and scarcely know where the real person begins and the artifice ends, don't you think? Who are you? Dearl asks. Let's go back to my clinic and see if we can't get this sorted out, I tell him, as we walk together in the eerie alleys of a lovely Frankfurt night. We pass by the English theater, and I watch as Dearl's eyes sparkle with intrigue. What are they playing tonight? Dearl asks. The Menagerie. Don Benway and his father were regulars at the hospital's oncology department and on familiar terms with Jerry, the head porter. Morning, handsome, Jerry would say as he approached. How are we today? A darn sight better than you, Walter would say, muttering behind his bandages. Walter had undergone regular surgery for over 3 years, and during that time, they'd snipped, sliced, and cut away so many facial lesions, he was almost unrecognizable. Your usual seat, sir? Jerry would ask, smiling as he pushed Walter's wheelchair. Do I have a choice in the matter? The plastic surgeons couldn't keep pace with Walter's disfigurement, and, as a result, he'd retreated from life and deteriorated both physically or mentally. Don was 9 years old back in 1977 when his family moved to the house that became their long-term family home. The Benway family attended a viewing the week before they moved in. It was the first time Don had visited the house and met Mr. and Mrs. Jolly. The couple had lived there most of their adult lives and cherished their old place. Despite their advanced years, they'd maintained the garden, and the Benway family would inherit an impressive collection of mature trees, shrubs, and plants, not to mention a curious menagerie of assorted wildlife. While Mr. Jolly escorted Don's parents around the interior, Mrs. Jolly showed the lad all the secret nooks and crannies in the garden, concluding her tour with an introduction to her tortoises, Thomas and Tabitha. Don's face beamed like an early morning sunrise when he met the wrinkly old reptiles. Their cold, scaly flesh and severe faces were both characterful and hideous at the same time. The old lady encouraged Don to offer them lettuce. His hand trembled as he offered the crisp leaves, and he laughed out loud when they recoiled into their gnarled shells. Oh no, what did I do? Don't worry, they'll get used to you. Are you leaving them here? It's their home, she said, and they'll bring good luck. She held Don's hand and, holding his gaze, made him promise to look after them. I'll do my best, he said. Let's meet the other creatures. Yes, please, he said with twinkling eyes. Mrs. Jolly introduced Don to the other inhabitants of her garden, explaining how to care for the small aviary of chirruping canaries and the modest, ornamental pond containing a dozen lethargic goldfish. At the exchange of contracts, the conveyancing solicitor notified Don's parents about the deal breaker. It's yes to the menagerie, or no sale. Don's father's jaw sagged in disbelief, and he voiced his objections, saying how much he couldn't abide pets. The lawyer shrugged and made it clear he got paid either way. However, Dawn's mother, Anita, had fallen in love with the house and fought her corner. Mr. Benway backed down for once and agreed to sign, providing he had no responsibility for the damn beasts. So said, so done. The completion date went ahead as planned, despite Walter's issue with the caveat, and he refused to acknowledge the animals. "I can't see the point of those ugly old creatures," he said, shaking his head. "They're supposed to bring good luck," Dawn said, "if we look after them. But they look half dead to me," said Walter. "And they're so slow." "You'll be old and creaking one day," said his wife. "Nobody would miss them if they were dumped in a hole and covered in soil." Dawn's mother rolled her eyeballs and sighed. She knew how to pick her battles and when to walk away from a pointless conversation. The solicitor completed the legal arrangements, and Dawn assumed charge of his new animal companions. Prior to marriage, Anita Benway had enjoyed the company of an excitable terrier called Dougal, who now lived with Dawn's maternal grandmother. "Don't you miss Dougal?" Dawn asked his mother one day. "Why, yes," she'd said. "But I can't look after him here, dear." "Why not?" "Your father's not keen," she'd said, sighing. Besides, Dougal's splendid company for Granny. Under the circumstances, Dawn was fortunate his father granted him any time to care for the motley collection in their new garden. The new-found responsibility was a life-enhancing experience Dawn would remember forever. However short-lived, it was the goldfish that vanished first. Mr. Benway blamed the local heron for their disappearance. Dawn accepted his father's explanation without question, and it wasn't until years later that he queried events. It was possible the beady-eyed predator had spotted the listless fish basking in the warm summer water. But had it swooped down and skewered them? It was doubtful, because they'd covered the water with a strawberry net designed to prevent such an occurrence. There was little chance of the bird reaching beneath the mesh, unless somebody had removed it. Walter's skin complaint started with 1 or 2 minor blemishes. He couldn't stop scratching. He had dry patches on his cheekbones, forehead, and temples that irritated him. The long-term result of a casual indifference to the perils of sunburn and skin protection. Dawn noticed him digging at them with his fingernails while he read his newspaper, watched TV, and during mealtimes at the dining table. Walter's urge to scratch was an instinctive and almost unconscious reaction. His tiny weeping sores would bleed, scab over, dry out, and itch like mad again. The aviary remained intact for about a year, until the last of the canaries vanished. It never occurred to Dawn that their dwindling numbers might be associated with his father's activities in the garden. Dawn was diligent about shutting the wire mesh door after feeding times, and couldn't work out how it was often ajar, or why Mephistopheles, the neighbor's tabby, looked so pleased with himself, licking his moist claws as if he'd enjoyed a 3-course meal. Walter dismantled the rickety wooden structure after the last resident disappeared and burned the remains at Halloween. Dawn asked for a replacement. It wasn't an option. "You'll just have to be happy with the tortoises, son," said his father, smirking, "and make the most of them while they're alive and kicking." It was after Halloween when Dawn first noticed the tortoises had vanished. There was no obvious explanation for their disappearance. He didn't suspect the heron, and Mephistopheles was nowhere to be found. "No point in worrying," said Mr. Benway. "I'm sure they'll return to trouble us again." Dawn's mother was a brave soul, bless her, and always gave sound advice based on common sense and astute observation. Anita had warned Walter about the dangers of scratching himself years before she passed away. She told her husband he was making his complaint worse and threatened to either clip his fingernails or knit him woolen mittens to prevent irritation and subsequent infection. Walter tutted with exasperation at her remarks, despite acknowledging she was correct. But would he stop? No way. In Anita's absence, Walter persisted against her advice, and his condition deteriorated. After 15 years of itching and scratching, the affected areas of skin expanded beyond all expectation, screaming out loud for medical intervention. It's standard practice to have sun-damaged skin removed, Walter's consultant said, recommending an initial series of minor operations to remove the first malignant lumps. The surgeons described the offending growths as blossoms, as if they were intriguing botanical discoveries to be dissected, examined, and archived for future generations of horticulturists to study and discuss in their PhD essays. 3 years ago, Walter's consultant found a lump on his neck that looked like cancer. He took a sample, and the lab results were indisputable. It was serious. They had to take positive action. The hospital rushed Dawn's father to the front of the queue. Within 2 weeks, they admitted him to hospital and started a month-long course of radiotherapy, resulting in emergency surgery. They removed a golf ball-sized tumor growing on his neck between his clavicle and jawbone. Walter's condition had started as sun damage and developed into galloping melanomas. It was the turning point for Walter. The oncologist gave him a low percentage chance of surviving another year. Contrary to his prediction, however, they prolonged Walter's life a further 3 years, but at a cost. Dawn's father took on an uncanny appearance. His once inquisitive and bright features disappeared after countless amounts of invasive surgery. The tip of his left ear was the first item to be snipped off. His attitude was stoic at that point. "It's you lot that have the problem," he'd said, brushing aside the issue. "I don't have to look at it, and I'm not worried about losing it." Very brave, Dawn thought, until the other ear faced the same treatment. Walter was much less philosophical at that point. He often pondered on cause and effect, and cursed his years of pottering about in the sun and dodging his wife's Factor 20. 2 years later, and he had both ears removed and 80% of his nose. Both nostrils were bloody gashes, above stretched and scabbed, beak like lips. Both eyes stared, unblinking, out of lidless sockets, and they'd reconstructed his forehead and eyebrows with pale and ill-matching flesh grafts. In places, the new skin flapped like an unfurled sail in the doldrums, and in other locations, it was tight like a snare drum at a state funeral. His entire head had become a work in progress because the surgeons had struggled to keep pace with malignant outcrops. They passed him around the department for every aspiring surgeon to add to the disfigured conglomeration, rebuilding his features as if he were an ancient building in need of a facelift, bashed back into shape, and finished with a few quick licks of skin-toned emulsion. It's easy to underestimate the psychological damage inflicted. Walter's habits changed to accommodate the process of assessment, consultation, and surgical procedure. He seldom ventured out during daylight, and then, with a great coat and a raised collar, his own shell-like protection, like a reptilian secret agent, disguising himself and hiding from the world, lest he draw aghast reactions or pitiful, tight-lipped expressions of sympathy. It was painful to watch the slow transformation unfold, and heartbreaking to witness him become a wretched creature, hobbling about like the monstrous denizen of Geneva that Mary Shelley transformed into a famous fictional creation, stitched together from ill-matched body parts and second-hand components, and destined to a lonely existence, or hounded by ignorant townsfolk, baying for blood. For the last year, every part of Walter's life revolved around the work required to fix him up and restore some degree of his former dignity. Given the state of his face since they started tweaking and tinkering with his facial lesions, he would have been better off employing Cecilia Gimenez to restore his looks. At least her work was consistent, as poor as it may be. In Walter's case, it looked as if they'd invited a dozen Cecilias to have a go. Don couldn't help looking at his father and thinking about the absent tortoises, their unblinking eyes, angular beaks, and scaly reptilian skin. He didn't believe in reincarnation, but Don couldn't help wondering if the missing amphibians had made their presence felt in some awful and grisly fashion. Creatures embroiled in karma's stealthy activities, visiting the family, perhaps in some other guise, to remind everyone that life in all its forms matters. It was after Mr. Benway's recent funeral that Don discovered the remains of Thomas and Tabitha. He was turning over the soil to the rear of the old family home when his spade hit something hard. After further investigation in the immediate area, Don unearthed not one, but 2 hollowed-out tortoise shells, their former inhabitants long reclaimed back to the earth, with the grim remains at his feet and the childhood memories of the menagerie's quiet demise. Don clenched his jaw and drew a long breath. What would drive any creature to burrow into the ground to die? A question he had long abandoned returned to haunt him. Surely it wasn't deliberate. The fix, the shorts and t-shirt, clad exercisers of various shapes and fitness levels, sipping their beverages while panting, stretching, beads of sweat on their foreheads, drying in the cool evening air, dark patches on their backs and stomachs glaring like mournful, weeping eyes, making you feel guilty about unused gym membership that's about to expire. The tap-tap-tapping keyboard pounders, lost in worlds of their own creation, focused on the words appearing on their screens, working or creating for themselves or others. Lidded containers overseeing, like proud agents by their sides, offering encouragement, support, reward in liquid form for their efforts, judging you for your collection of rejections. The well-dressed dog lovers, their own drinks an afterthought, as they busy themselves making sure their pets have enough water in their thoughtfully provided bowls and are sitting obediently, earning treats by not making a racket. Walker and walkie taking a well-earned rest before heading home, reminding you of haunted rooms you can no longer return to. The lovers, the partners, the same-sex and opposite-sex couples, clutching hands across tables in one of 3 marquees around the hissing, steaming hazelnut, caramel, and vanilla-scented truck that has appeared in the park. Paper cup professors of caffeinated romance misting the air between glances with tendrils of tender loving steam, taunting you with wafting depictions of what was, what would have been, what no more will. The sights, the scents, the sounds of people alive, happy in this moment with their others or in their own skin, following their still unbeaten paths, writing the lyrics of their songs, being, doing, loving, with some kind of purpose, forcing a lump to lodge in your throat when you question yours, a purpose you no longer have, and perhaps never did. The something you did have, the someone who you loved and who loved you back unconditionally despite your flaws and transgressions, the someone who gave you reasons to get up, to self-motivate, who inspired you to be better, to try hard, reasons that no longer exist, the shame, the warmth in your hand, in the quickly cooling air as you accept what the man in the truck hands you, the thanks you offer, insincere, as you meet his crystalline gaze and sever it burnt by eye contact, by those smiling irises, contentment radiating from them like accusatory lasers, making you feel ungrateful for the life you have squandered and the breath you have taken for granted. The glitch-like, stuttering awkwardness with which you turn from that man in the pristine white apron and peculiar cocked red beret, refusing the lid and the napkins, head hung low as you seek out the most isolated table in the most empty marquee, ignoring all others as you move towards it. The laughs and snippets of conversation from people in person or on phones, chatting to family, friends, loved ones, giving household instructions, finalizing meetup plans, complaining about workloads that are stressful, making you wish you could call her about such things, making you aware of how much you threw away, the jerk of the head when you accidentally meet a woman's eyes, the ignoring of her friendly nod and greeting, the severe swerve in another direction, to slink into a seat in a lonely corner, the escape, the length of gauze wrapped around your knuckles, successfully preventing color seeping through, the clean vinyl tablecloth on the rickety picnic table, the coarse wooden bench tucked beneath, the absence of someone taking a seat beside you with their soy milk, gluten-free latte, and blueberry muffin, the swaying attendee dressed like the vendor in beret and apron, but beyond that clad in denim, head to toe, feet strapped into hobnail boots, meandering from table to table, marquee to marquee, like the needle in a broken compass that can't find north. Cloth in one hand, multi-purpose cleaning spray in the other, squirting, wiping, cleaning in no rush, smiling to no one. He ambles, a grateful glint in his green eyes, the smooth, milky liquid in your mouth as you lift your uninjured hand and tilt your head back. The difficulty swallowing the lump, the warmth flowing into your chest, melting the frozen surface of your cracked, glacial heart, the guilt, the thought of the note in one jacket pocket, the words for your mother, the apology, the weight of the newly purchased box cutter in the other, the shameful plan, this unexpected stop on the way to execute it, the coffee truck and setup that wasn't there that morning or ever before, when things were normal, the same, when you tried and made an effort to be strong, when you were wanted by someone better than you, though you had little to offer, the rising, silvery disk squinting behind jostling clouds, the quieting day, the fading light, the blinding, screaming, retching recollections of champagne and cake and celebration for a writer's work selected for publication, the realization of a long-held dream, the receipt of long-awaited recognition, the saccharine sweet story of success, but hers, not yours, The act, the other attendees, oozing out of the truck, also in aprons and berets, with eyes that stir and probe, smiling as they enter the marquees, nodding at patrons, pleasant, friendly, nice, busying themselves, loosening ties on poles that hold up side panels, letting white PVC barriers drop to the grass, shutting out the park, the trees, the darkening sky, the faint lunar reflection, broken and distorted in warped, uneven plastic windows. The people in your marquee and others finishing their drinks and standing up, prompted by this closing up routine. The wooden panel in the truck's vending window swinging shut, the shuffling of feet and yapping dogs, the froth and bubbles in the golden brown liquid in your hand, spinning as you swirl it round and round. The lowering level of the fluid as you lift, tilt, gulp, watching it diminish like time. The last marquee, side panel, dropping, trapping you inside like another prison, beyond the ones of meat and bone and thought. Your cellmates making for the loose, hanging flap that is an out. The man reading the newspaper, the woman nursing the baby, the teenager scrolling on phone, standing up and striding from their tables, taking up position by the door, the sudden screams from unseen marquees on either side, making you jump, spill your last precious ounces, knock the bench to the ground as you marionette up, the utterances of shock and surprise, the disbelief and confusion, the discarded newspaper, the babyless bundle of dropped towels, the dark screen phone cast aside, the side panels rising as berated, aproned attendees duck under and in, silent, smiling, shifting like sidling snakes, the flash of pointed teeth as their lips splay wide, the panic, the joggers, the dog walkers, the writers and bound in love souls, pounced on by newspaper reader, fake baby feeder, pretend phone scroller, and others, knocked onto tables and to the ground, clawed and pawed, clothing torn, chests and necks exposed, the yelping dogs that escape into the night as masters and mistresses shriek, the box cutter in your hand, your finger on the switch, the blade click, click, clicking forth, the fear clutching your heart like a pair of hands, throttling the image, the hand on your forehead and the arm around your chest as you hold the blade out to defend, the unbalancing tug, the forced turn, the visage of evil, hovering close, like in a mirror, the beret, the crystal eyes, the gaping maw and teeth, the hypnotic stare that pulverizes the fragments of your clay heart and causes your body to stiffen, the face craning close, the hot breath on your neck the pop and puncture of flesh, the memories, broken glass, shouted insults, anger bloomed from the seeds of perceived failure, raised fists, temperatures, voices, bruises and blood, the teeth sinking in, cold like daggers of ice, the frozen lips clamping to flesh with rubber-like suction, the precious source of life exsanguinating out her face, screaming her dismay. She gave you everything, all her trust and faith, her support. She believed in you. You let her down. The death of love, the box cutter, propelled by instinct, blade slicing through tissue-thin flesh, serrated edge carving up gristle, the steaming, warm essence of all things that live washing over your hand, the gauze bandage stained red at last, the chuckle in your throat as a monster drinks its fill, the realization of futility as a monster surrenders, the smile on your lips, the roll of your eyes, the abandonment of hope and acceptance, the curse of being a coward to the end, the story. What was the story? What was it called? The relief, the story, the one that she wrote, the one about vampires, the release, the vampires who get their caffeine fix from blood, the revulsion, the blood that drains out of your veins. Now the story is yours. These old bones, flowery carvings, adorned the strangely shaped old furniture and caught Jacob's eye. Happy cherubs were encrusted with dust, and on the walls, the springtime imagery of oil paintings was draped in cobwebs hanging like veils. The floorboards creaked, and the weight of dust and neglect hung everywhere. But still, Jacob couldn't help but explore and get lost in the place, looking for creepy old things and ghosts. At last, he made his way up to the attic, which was pierced here and there by shafts of dust-specked morning light shining through the windows. It was filled with boxes and countless old and broken things, and it smelled musty and faintly of the sweet smell of rot and aged tobacco. Altogether, the scent spoke of a long history and was not entirely unpleasant. Stacks of magazines were spilled on the ground, and a ratty mannequin was wearing a straw-colored blonde wig. On one side, a line of well-worn teddy bears of various sizes stared back at him. Suddenly, his foot slipped on something, and looking down, he saw the parchment-like paper of architectural diagrams lying buried under a thick layer of dust. Then, at a small desk nearby, a black and white photo album lay open, revealing pictures of distant relatives he had never heard of. All in all, it felt like a strange old museum filled with oddities from centuries past. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something truly creepy was indeed hidden here, and he wasn't sure that he wanted to play hide and seek with it. He was about to turn and leave when suddenly he felt goosebumps on his neck. He heard a girl's voice sweetly humming a song he did not know. Then he saw her playfully skipping towards him, wearing an old-fashioned dress. She shimmered transparently, light blue and opalescent. She was swinging her arms by her sides, her eyes sparkling with mischief as she peered at him. And somehow, he forgot to be afraid. "Hi, my name's Jacob. Aren't you a ghost?" he asked her, his brow furrowed. "It's so very nice to meet you, Jacob." "I'm Mildred," the little girl said elegantly, before curtsying. "And yes, I am a ghost. Isn't it obvious?" she added, with a teasing smirk that somehow got under his skin. "Don't tease me. It's not every day that one meets a ghost. You know, that's true. And in my case, you can only see me on Halloween. It's when I get to play for just one day a year," Mildred said. And then she jumped up into the air, her ethereal substance warping and elongating, rapidly funneling into the ear of a nearby teddy bear. "Why, hello there," she said in a mock teddy bear voice, waving the bear's paw. "That's so cool," Jacob said. "Yes, it's quite fun. I can animate a lot of things. You want I should go into your parents' car next?" she asked, with a mischievous grin. "Nah, I don't think they'd appreciate that," Jacob said pensively. "But let's totally find other things to try." Then, as Mildred stepped out of the bear, Jacob paused a while before speaking. "Hey, why don't you come trick-or-treating with me tonight? You can use the biggest bear and pretend it's a costume." "What a great idea. I can't believe I never thought of that. Or maybe I just never had anyone to go with," Mildred said, her expression growing bashful. "Well, you've got me now, Mildred. Jacob, come down. We're going to go visit the town," his mother called out from the floor below. "Hey, I'll be back real soon, okay?" Jacob said. "Right. I'll be here waiting for you," Mildred answered with a nod. Later in the day, it had grown dark, and Jacob came up the ladder, holding a lantern in one hand. "My mom's got a bunch of candles burning downstairs. She thought that it would be cool to use candles inside the pumpkins. Some of them are scented, but I hope you don't mind the smell. Your mom sounds pretty fun. And also, I can't smell, silly. I'm a ghost." "Right," Jacob said, slapping his forehead. "Hey, Jacob, I have a secret to show you. How about I show you my favorite toy?" Mildred skipped over to the back of the room and into a large chest hidden behind piles of boxes. The chest creaked open, and Jacob went over to see what was inside. He was taken aback at seeing an old skeleton. It seemed small, like a child's skeleton, and he realized this was where the sickly smell of rot had been coming from. "Mildred, is it yours?" Jacob asked, eyes wide open, his throat growing dry, and his pulse running a little faster. "Yes, it is. Unfortunately, I died here under circumstances most foul. It's why I'm a ghost haunting this place, you silly boy," she said teasingly. But that was a long time ago. Since then, I've grown so bored. And this was one of my most fun toys. Truly, I've had such fun scaring people who saw me through the attic windows," she added with a giggle. "I guess that could be fun," Jacob said, unsure what to say. Then she continued, "But here, I'll show you. Now, don't you get spooked on me," she said, jumping into the skeleton. There was a sudden buzz of static electricity, and Jacob's lantern shut off. The room was now only lit by the otherworldly blue glow of the animated skeleton. "Isn't it fun and creepy?" he heard Mildred's voice say with a giggle, seeing the little girl's skeleton come out of the chest and walk towards him in the dark with a lurching gait. Jacob was seized with a sudden terror. Had she been friendly all along, just to lure him here and do goodness knew what to him? Jacob ran away, screaming and knocking things over. Immediately, the old bones clattered to the floor. "I didn't mean to scare you so much. Please, please come back," he heard Mildred's voice say with a whimper as he hurried down the attic steps. "Please, Jacob," he heard her beg again from further away, her voice no less desperate for being fainter. It was only with great effort that he finally screwed on his courage and came back up the ladder. His lantern was lit again when he carefully emerged into the attic. Finally, he saw Mildred waiting for him there, wiping ghostly tears from her cheeks, an apologetic look on her face. "I was so worried you wouldn't come back, and I'm so sorry for scaring you. I guess I came up with some strange games all by myself." "It's okay, and I'm so sorry you were lonely, Mildred. But now you've got me to talk to. Oh, won't you please come by and talk to me again later? I can still speak to you on other days, even though you won't be able to see me. I promise I'll come by as often as I can," Jacob said solemnly, and Mildred gave him a sweet smile. "Oh, I'm so happy to hear that, Jacob," she said softly. "Wanna go trick-or-treating? Get into the bear, and I'll meet you outside in half an hour." "Deal," Mildred answered with a grin. "Cockroach Girl." The floor underneath, Barry shuddered and swayed as they took a tight corner. The clattering whoosh of the dark tunnel drowned out the tired silence of the other commuters. Barry's sweaty hand threatened to slide loose from its cold metal pole, so he adjusted his grip and tried not to think about what had made it so sticky. Multiple people had relieved themselves in this car over the course of the day. The sickly sweet mixture of vomit and tangy excrement churned his stomach, threatening to dislodge the chopped salad he'd had for lunch that afternoon. Barry felt the gray-haired woman next to him shift away from his lifted arm in disgust. He enjoyed the small reprieve of the starchy fabric peeling away from the wetness of his underarm, where it had been chafing all day. There was nothing to be done, he thought bitterly, unless she wanted him falling into her lap. He could smell the baby powder wafting up from her hair, and the crusty perfume from a bottle that should have been thrown out years ago. Barry threatened to go flaccid at the idea of her wrinkled, fat body jiggling under her itchy wool cardigan. She should be so lucky, he thought with a sneer. Barry turned his attention back to the more desirable object of his affection, the girl at the other end of the car. He felt hot blood rush toward the front of his groin, making it bulge against his tight polyester dress pants so hard he could feel the metal zipper of his fly dig into him. Barry couldn't take his eyes off her proper legs pushed together in an effort to take up as little space as possible and attract as little attention as possible. Her tight, office-appropriate skirt hugged her hips and thighs, exposing bare legs, freshly shaven. He could tell from here she squirmed under his gaze. Barry adjusted his pants, even though no one on the bus was looking at him. He liked feeling like a potential threat. Barry knew he wasn't trash like the vermin around him. They all followed the rules. They went to work in their maze-like offices. They ate paste from tubes that barely resembled food. Humans were supposed to be apex predators, but the people who pressed in around him, jostled by the winding track, were so distant from their glorious biological potential, so detached from the instincts sharpened by thousands of generations of violence, that they had allowed their senses to dull irreparably from disuse, content to compete for scraps like the insects they were. But not Barry. He was in touch with his higher animal self. He used his God-given senses every day. And today, they were homing in on a target worthy of his attention. A girl he could tell would be a challenge. A girl who would force him to prove his manhood. A girl unlike the rest of them. This girl had her attention not on her phone, but on a book open in her lap. Barry craved the opportunity to see the title she was so engrossed in. He made a mental note to get closer to her when she got up for her stop. He also felt a surge of jealousy towards that book. He wanted to be the one who was in her lap, pulling her head back by the hair, taking what was his. The train jostled again as it went through another turn. The girl shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She knew he was watching her, yet she refused to meet his gaze. Barry found himself starting to get angry at her insolence. He deserved her attention, as if in response to his escalating need. The girl brought her hand up to her skirt. Barry's attention became rapt and utterly focused. The hairs on his arm stood up in arousal as he watched her, not daring to move, wondering if this was real. The girl reached underneath her tight little skirt and squirmed around. She had to be putting on a show. Otherwise, why would she do this? Barry glanced around, checking to see if anyone else was watching, but no one seemed to notice. The girl reached her hand all the way up between her legs. her expression unchanging, her eyes never leaving her book. Barry was now stroking himself outside his pants. He didn't care if anyone saw him. She was making him do this. The filthy little. The girl removed her hand from between her legs and pulled her arm out from under her skirt. She was holding something in the flat palm of her hand. Barry squinted and peered closer to see what it was. He stepped back in shock and confusion. Sitting in the girl's hand, antennae twitching, was a thick, 4-inch long, glittering cockroach. Its hard-shelled body, spiny legs, and beady head were unmistakable. The girl let it fall to the floor of the train, all without removing her eyes from her book. The cockroach skittered towards Barry. He let out an involuntary yelp that caused some passengers to finally look up and notice him. A businessman unceremoniously stepped on the cockroach, smushing its guts into an unrecognizable blob. The girl never looked up from her book. Barry wasn't a bad guy. He didn't want to hurt anyone, but he needed answers. So, when the girl got off at her stop, he followed her. They emerged from the underground station onto a dark street. There was no moon out that night, and the glow of the street lamps were obscured by overgrown trees. The girl walked ahead of him, handbag slung over her shoulder. When they were finally far enough from the main road, where no one could see or hear them, he picked up his pace to catch up with her. Barry's footsteps crunched the leaves and twigs on the sidewalk, so his approach was anything but silent. He could see her tense up. Barry grabbed her by the shoulder and spun her around to look at him. He took a step back in surprise. There was no fear in the girl's eyes. It unsettled him. They usually looked more scared. He pressed on anyway. "What was that back there?" Barry asked. "What was what?" "That thing. Did you pull a cockroach out from between your—" Barry gestured helplessly at his own crotch. He couldn't believe what he was asking. "I think you should leave me alone." The girl turned around to continue walking, but Barry wasn't done with her. He grabbed her arm. "I think you should answer my question." "I don't owe you anything," the girl said, looking him dead in the eye. This disturbed Barry more than he cared to admit. They usually struggled to avoid his gaze. He was in uncharted territory, but he couldn't turn back now. His cock twitched hungrily. Maybe this could be fun, Barry tried to convince himself. He could break her. That would make this feel more earned, more challenging. He had been starting to get bored with his targets. Centuries of comfort and complacency had left the modern woman weak and pathetic. "I'm not done with you yet," he told her. Barry pushed the girl up against the retaining wall next to the sidewalk. This was usually when they screamed, but the girl didn't scream. She pushed him back. "Get off of me," she said forcefully, but Barry would not. He could not. He had come so far. He needed to know. He wasn't just here to satisfy his own primal needs. No, not this time. He needed to know what she had down there, what she was hiding from him, how she was able to produce. The girl kneed him in the groin, but Barry was not an amateur at this. He expertly leaned back to avoid a direct hit while still keeping his forearm against her chest, pinning her up against the wall. He pushed her knee to the side. "Hold still," Barry told her through gritted teeth. He was starting to get angry. "This will all be over soon." At last, he managed to reach up under her skirt and pull her underwear to the side. She had stopped struggling. He was grateful. Once they were convinced that there was no way out of this, they always ended up enjoying it. They would never admit it, but he could tell that they did. The girl was looking at him again, calmly. "Don't do that," Barry told her. "Don't do what?" "Look at me like that." The girl laughed. "You can't control me," she told him. "You're a dead man." Barry slapped her across the face. It was his turn to laugh. It was a humorless, forced laugh, mostly designed to disguise his fear. "You don't know who I am," he told her, more to convince himself than her. "You don't know my name. They'll never find me." Barry put his fingers in the space between her legs, relaxing into his victory. She was smooth, freshly shaven, just as he had predicted. But there was something else in there he could feel as he unzipped his pants and got himself out and ready. Something plasticky. A Nuva ring, perhaps. Or he didn't have much time to guess. The thing crawled straight out of the girl's vagina and onto his hand. Barry recoiled and flung it to the ground with a yell. What the fuck?" "Does that answer your question?" said the girl. "Crazy bitch." Barry's head was spinning. He had no idea how she did this magic trick, and he had no desire to stick around and find out. He grabbed his dick to put it back into his pants, but the girl grabbed onto him harder. "Hang on," she said. "I'm not done with you yet." She parted her knees invitingly. The girl once again pulled her lacy underwear to the side, fully exposing herself. Barry watched in horror as a beady little head and spiny legs clawed their way out of her, the antennae releasing themselves from her depths with a little bounce. It eagerly ran down the inside of her thigh, down her leg, all the way to the ground. It was followed by another and another and another. Some of them scampered down her thighs to the ground, then over to Barry's shoes, then up his pant leg. He tried to pull away, but she had his hard dick in her hand with a vice grip and wouldn't let him go. Why did it stay hard while he was so afraid? Why wouldn't his body listen to him? Barry didn't want this. Other cockroaches climbed out of her and crawled up her thigh, over the edge of her skirt, up her chest, and onto her shoulder, down her arm, all the way to his exposed flesh. They swarmed all over his body. Barry screamed. They made their way up his neck to his face, their delicate, spiny legs tingling his skin, causing Barry to jerk in violent fear and revulsion. He shut his mouth tight and continued to scream with it closed. No matter. The insects pushed in between, prying his lips open. Barry finally succeeded in yanking his penis out of her hands. He didn't care if it broke or if she peeled all of the skin off of it. He just needed to get out of there. But the cockroaches kept coming. The swarm grew bigger and bigger, finding their way underneath his clothes, into every orifice available to them. They overpowered him. Barry couldn't hold them out any longer. He covered his ears, but that left his eyes and nose and rectum exposed. Barry stumbled to his feet and fell to the ground. He choked on them. He could feel them with every sense of his body and brain, wriggling their way inside of him, unwelcome, filthy, suffocating. Time slowed for Barry. He knew only fear and blinding pain. The girl watched, impassive, as Barry lay twitching on the ground. During those final minutes of consciousness, Barry was freed from any stress, repression, self-loathing, or desire. It took 7 minutes for him to die. After Barry's body grew still, the girl picked her purse up off the ground where it had fallen. She hung it back on her shoulder and continued up the sidewalk on her way home. She left her babies behind to nibble at his corpse. Eventually, they got bored. The cockroaches scampered off into the night to scavenge for bits of food, hoisted into the dumpsters behind the dimly lit bars and tightly locked apartment buildings. Their grotesque image kept them safe. Fear kept them hidden. Disgust allowed them to move freely, unbothered in the shadows of the city. Like the girl, they were survivors. Swing a sparrow on a string. Angela opened her eyes to a new day, not knowing if it were morning. There were no windows in her room, and it could have been the middle of the afternoon, or even midnight. She heard no sounds except her own breathing, and when she awoke, she inhaled and exhaled heavily, as if she had just completed a marathon race instead of having slept for hours. Perhaps she had slept for days. She had stopped wondering about time months ago. Now she simply slept for as long as she was able, then stayed awake for as long as was necessary. She knew she would have to eat, that they would soon be coming with food, and had she felt stronger, she might have spat it back at them, as she had done when they first brought her here. But she had swallowed that rage a long time ago. Now, Angela ate whatever morsels they gave her, and recently she had to restrain herself from thanking them. She feared the day might come when she would feel grateful that they had allowed her to live, when she might find herself smiling at them as if she understood and accepted the perfect correctness of her captivity. She looked at herself in the small, cracked mirror above the sink. Although her hair was stringy and unwashed, she remembered how golden it had shimmered in the sun. Her face was still quite pretty, and once she had heard one guard tell another he had never seen eyes quite that blue. The other whispered what a pity it was. If only she had a piece of paper, a pen, even a crayon. Maybe this time she would show them that she could create something useful and lasting that mattered to them, something that in turn would make her matter. When Angela had first arrived, they had eagerly granted the request of the 18-year-old girl and waited to see what gifts her imagination might offer them. She had succeeded only in producing a few formless scrawls that they said were not art, and some rhymeless gibberish that they told her was not poetry. They took away the paper, the pens, and the paintbrushes, and not long ago, the tall blonde guard, who wore the keys around his neck, had asked her if she might like to sing. Any tune would do, he told her. Please, oh please, let me try, Angela had begged. The next day, he brought to her room a small cassette recorder with a blank tape. Perhaps we will find the songbird in you where we were unable to find the artist. Sing, and we promise to listen, he assured her. For days, Angela sang alone in her room, remembering what her mother had sung to her many years ago. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. A week later, she handed the cassette to the man with the keys and simply said, "Please." He stuffed the tape into his pocket and left without a word. The next day, the guard sat alongside her bed and informed her that he and the others had decided that she was no songbird. For a moment, his words had sounded like an apology. She knew she would never see the tall guard again. The wasted papers that Angela had filled with nonsense and the inarticulate squawks she had tried to pass off as music had convinced them that further efforts on their part would be foolish. From that day forward, the guards who silently delivered her food seemed unwilling to even look at her. Angela heard the key slip into the lock on the other side of the heavy door. She no longer pretended to be asleep when they came, because they did not care whether she were sleeping or awake. One of them always waited outside as the other entered. She heard the heavy jingle of keys and looked up. The keys were around the guard's neck. "You," she said. But the word was only a statement of fact. not sparked with the warmth that accompanies the recognition of a familiar face. Once uttered, the word sounded idiotic. "Yes," he answered, closing the door behind him. He did not look at her as he set the tray of food on the stand alongside her bed. She had expected no further conversation, and when he spoke again, his words startled her. "They told me to say the other guard had caught a flu." He pulled up the small wooden chair and sat, although the chair was too small, and he seemed not to know whether to fold his legs. "There is no flu. They wanted us to talk." His statement was ludicrous. She had not had a conversation with him in months, and those few she remembered had been pitifully brief and one-sided. "I don't understand," she said, as she selected a small bread crust on her tray. She had learned to keep her responses short, for the guards tired of her quickly. "I'd like to know about God," he said, as if this were meant as an answer. "Tell me how you feel about God. Tell me about your religion, your beliefs." "I have no belief in God. I have no religion." "Don't you have some sort of records about that?" She felt immediately sorry she had asked, but the guard ignored the question anyway. He fidgeted in the small chair. "You're an atheist, then? Or an agnostic? You have opinions regarding God's existence, or the lack of it?" He sounded almost hopeful. "I'm an apathist. I don't much think about it," she answered as she nibbled at the crust. She picked up a slab of egg yolk with her left hand, ignoring the silverware, leaned her head back, and dropped the yolk into her mouth. Her response oddly pleased him, although he did not smile. "An apathist? That was a joke you just said. Admittedly, not a very good one, but it was a joke. Then you have a sense of humor. Tell me another joke." Angela looked hard at the man, not certain about how earnest her guard's question was. "A joke? You mean, like, why did the chicken cross the road?" The absurdity of her question seemed to increase the guard's excitement. "Yes. Yes. Tell me, why did the chicken cross the road?" There was anticipation in his voice, as if he sincerely were interested in the chicken's intentions. And when he leaned toward Angela for her response, his face revealed the hint of a smile. "Perhaps the chicken was an apathist," she said. The guard's smile disappeared as quickly as if it were erased. "That isn't funny. I'm sorry, but that isn't funny at all." His tone became flat, expressionless. He sounded like a man keeping some kind of score. No points for humor. "Sorry. Next category. Can we talk politics?" he asked. "No. Sociology, science, history, law, philosophy." His questions now had become a formality, a checklist to be completed, filed, and forgotten. "No. No. No. No." Although Angela could not remember ever having had a discussion this long during her stay here, she wanted this conversation to end. Perhaps I could tell you why the philosopher crossed the road? No, I guess you're right. That wasn't very funny either. I suppose you'll be leaving now. Her question had anticipated his next words. The tall guard rose from the chair with difficulty, trying to maintain his dignity when he could not get up with his first attempt. I have one more question for you, Angela, he said. He had never called her by her name before, and his doing so struck her as odd. He walked to the foot of her bed and turned toward her. Do you know why you are here? He asked this without malice or emotion, with only the desire to know her answer, as he had wanted to know about songbirds and chickens. I'm here because you see me as a useless bird. Having said the words, she knew they had always been on her tongue, waiting to be spoken. I beg your pardon. You know, the sparrow who can no longer fly becomes useless to the other sparrows, a burden to them. I've broken my wing, isn't that right? And the flock has no further need of me. I'm impressed, the guard answered. That is quite a creative analogy from one who knows so little of creativity. He sat on the edge of the bed and moved close to Angela, as if to reveal a secret. Instead, he reached under the blanket and grabbed hold of her right hand, yanking it out from where she had kept it hidden. He held her arm straight up, and the pain caused her to wince. But this isn't exactly a broken wing, is it, Angela? It's a wilted arm, a useless limb. It is not pleasant to look at. It serves no function, and it belongs to you. It is you. The words came in furious bursts now, like machine gun pellets, and he shook her withered limb as he spoke. You see yourself as a wounded sparrow, do you? What happens if we take that sparrow and tie her leg to a string and swing her around in circles in a desperate attempt to make her fly? She struggles against hope to use her wings, her useless wings. And meanwhile, we swing her around and around and around, wasting our energy, wasting our time. And in the end, when we stop swinging her, she comes crashing down to earth anyway. Our time has been wasted. Her hopes have been destroyed. What is the point? Why even bother? He let go of her arm, allowing it to drop. For a moment, Angela stared at the shrunken arm as if it were a foreign thing that did not belong in the bed with her. She spoke without removing her eyes from it. A sparrow who can no longer fly can sing. And if she can't sing, she can still feel, can still love? The guard interrupted. That's exactly right, Angela. We asked this sparrow to sing, and she could not. But we realized she may be capable of love. The kind of love that could only result in frustration for her. Because the real question is she capable of being loved? Do the words she writes encourage love? Does her beauty or intellect in any way inspire it. It is unlikely that anyone would even try to love her because of that hideous limb. Not that all physical impediments are repulsive. Perhaps if she were only blind. Stop. Please, stop. Angela pleaded. Her brief taste of defiance had made her want to gag. You want to cover your ears, don't you? You want to block out the words, make me go away. Maybe you would even like to strike me, he continued. But you can't do it, can you? That limb just lies there like a dead weight. Do you see my point? I have my other arm, whose only function is to hide its companion. No, Angela, I'm sorry, but the time has come for us to stop swinging the sparrow's string. His anger slowly dissolved, and he fell silent for a moment. He attempted to hold her wilted hand in his, but she pulled it away. Instead, he took her other hand. But first, I have something I want to show you. Something you need to see. He sat on the bed and placed her fingers on his left leg below the knee. Rub your hand along my leg, Angela. Does the calf feel peculiar to you? Congenital defect, they called it. Like they called yours. The leg is gone, at least from the knee down. Amazing what they can do with prosthetics today. But you see, I have my particular talents. I happen to be quite good at drawing people out, at enabling them to find a way to compensate for their physical shortcomings. And I can be quite decisive when called upon to make the kind of decisions that others would find distasteful. No one ever asked me to sing or to fly. But when they came for me, I simply told them what I could do. Angela struggled to pull her hand free as her anger rose inside her like hot bile. But you also decide who is to be exterminated. You decide who the state no longer regards as useful. What gives you the right? This gives me the right, he shouted, his breath hot on her face as he tapped her hand on the hard wood of his prosthetic leg. This has forced me to find my usefulness to others, just as your pathetic limb has forced you to admit that you have none. And I have no intention of relinquishing my usefulness by allowing you to continue your hollow existence. I refuse not to matter. The guard's renewed anger seemed to embarrass him, and he turned away from Angela. He ran his fingers through his blonde hair in an attempt to collect himself. And when he again looked down at his leg, he noticed that Angela's hand was grasping it. Angela knew he had been unaware of her touch until he had looked. When his eyes locked with hers, her mouth curled in a bitter smile. I feel this, she said, as she ran the tiny hand of the wilted arm along his wooden leg. I feel this with both of my hands, even the one you call useless. Tell me what you feel when I touch you. Does this prosthetic device extend all the way to your heart? Angela tapped on the artificial limb as if she were expecting a reflexive kick. A curious question, he answered. You might have made a fine idealist if you had believed in God. She moved close to his face and whispered, to get to the other side. That is why a chicken would cross the road, isn't it? He paused for a moment to look at her. Such blue eyes, he said. Such exquisitely beautiful blue eyes. He called for the guards to take her, and within moments, 3 entered the room, and another 2 waited by the doorway. She presented no struggle and went quietly with them. She wondered as they walked if one of them would take her hand